Hello and welcome to the Daily Aus. I'm Lucy Tassell.
I'm Sam Koslowski.
Over the weekend, Britain's biggest music festival, Glastonbury, was held on a farm in southwest England. This year's edition made more headlines than usual due to a pair of acts, Irish rap group Kneecap and English punk pair Bob Vylan. Kneecap's inclusion on the lineup was already newsworthy due to one of its members facing a terrorism-related charge, while Bob Vylan sparked discussion by calling for, quote, death to the IDF, the Israeli Defence Forces, mid-set. In today's show, we'll break down the conversation around the two performances, the government's reaction, and a woman named Helen from Wales.
And Lucy, the first thing to say before we get into this, as I'm sure listeners can already identify, is that there's some pretty strong language in this episode.
Yes.
So that's worth saying up front. The other thing worth saying up front is that as much as we wanted to be, you and I weren't there. We were still here in Sydney, but over the weekend, it felt like I was there.
Yeah.
If I went on my phone, the amount of content that was being uploaded from the festival, some heartwarming moments, Lewis Capaldi returning to stage 2 years after his last performance.
Yeah.
But there was also a lot of footage of the performance by punk duo Bob Vylan.
Yeah.
Talk me through what happened at that set.
Well, I'll start by saying that the reason we saw so many clips is because of the BBC, the UK's public broadcaster. That's what our ABC is modelled on. In Australia, we pay for the ABC through our taxes. In the UK, they make a direct payment every year called the TV licence, and it costs around 370 Australian dollars. And I mention all of this because the BBC broadcasts Glasto sets live, and they also make them available on their iPlayer later on, which is like the equivalent of iView.
And they're also on YouTube, which is where they're viewed by people all over the world.
Yeah.
But it's a relatively unique situation to have a lot of a festival being filmed and broadcast live. What is the relationship between the BBC and Glastonbury?
Yeah, they're not like an official sponsor or anything, but they have broadcast Glastonbury sets for decades, originally on the radio. You said it was relatively unique. I think it's almost unique, but it's sort of like the ABC's relationship with Splendour in the Grass, or what that used to be, where the arm of the public broadcaster is kind of bringing the show to people who can't attend because it's culturally important and significant. And ahead of the festival, we knew which sets the BBC would be broadcasting live and which would be available later. And that meant that when Bob Vylan took the stage, this duo, I should say both of their members have the stage name Bobby Vylan, so I'm just going to say Bob Vylan for ease.
Fair enough.
That meant that when they took the stage to perform on Saturday afternoon local time, they knew that what they said was going to be broadcast live on the public broadcaster.
We're seeing the UK and the US be complicit in war crimes and genocide happening over there to the Palestinian people. And I know we're on the BBC, that we're not going to say anything crazy, all right, though. Leave that for them lads. All right, but have you heard this one, though? Death to the IDF! Death to the IDF! Death to the IDF!
So that's lead vocalist Bobby Vylan. When he says them lads in that clip, he's talking about Kneecap, the Irish group I mentioned, whose performance the BBC was not broadcasting.
Okay, so there's a couple of moving parts here. Before we get into the reaction to the Bob Vylan performance and why Kneecap's performance wasn't being broadcast, give me some context on Kneecap, this second group we're talking about.
Yeah, so Kneecap are an Irish rap trio. They're from Northern Ireland, which is one of the 4 parts of the United Kingdom. It has been since the 1920s. It's separated from the Republic of Ireland. We don't have all week for me to sit here and explain hundreds of years of Irish politics and unrest, but suffice it to say, the members of Kneecap may have been born over the border in the UK, but they are staunchly pro United Ireland outside of British control, so reintegrating Northern Ireland into the Republic of Ireland. For example, you can see their 2019 track, Get Your Brits Out, which is sort of a punny way of saying get them out of Ireland.
Sure.
their shoes, mate. Get your bread set, get your bread set, get your bread set. We're on a mad one. Get your bread set, get your bread set, get your bread set. We're on a mad one. Get your bread set, get your bread set, get your bread set.
Kneecap are also strong advocates for the protection of the Irish language, which the English government has a long history of suppressing. I mean, literally nearly 700 years since the English Parliament passed a law banning anyone who lived in an English colony in Ireland from speaking the Irish language, among other, like many other cultural suppressions. They have a semi-autobiographical film that was released last year. It's on Stan. We'll pop the link in the show notes if you want to know more about them. But these are the kind of the key things to know about them. They're a pro-Irish Republic group. They care very much about the Irish language, and they're a rap group.
And so what was the reason their performance wasn't being broadcast?
Hello, Billy here from TDA. We have just looked at our YouTube analytics and 95% of you who are watching our videos aren't subscribing. If you want to help independent media like us grow, the best way you can do that is by pressing subscribe. Thank you so much, and back to the video.
Yeah, so one of their 3 members, Mo Chara, has recently been charged with a terrorism-related offence for allegedly displaying a Hezbollah flag on stage in 2023. Now, for those who don't know or might need a refresher, Hezbollah is a Lebanese militia. It's backed by Iran. Australia and the UK both list it as a terrorist organisation, and it's illegal in the UK to show support for it, including displaying its flag. Now, Mo Chara is awaiting further proceedings relating to the 2023 charge, and both he and Kneecap have not denied the incident, but they argue their work is rooted in political commentary, satire, and artistic expression. In light of the ongoing proceedings, the BBC chose not to broadcast their set live, though it was later made available to watch on iPlayer, again, like iView.
And the main way that we're engaging with clips from that performance is from crowdsourced clips, right?
Yes. So there's a woman called Helen Wilson. She's from Wales, and she knew that it wasn't going to be broadcast live, so she live streamed their set from her phone to thousands of people at a time, including at one point, I think she said she burnt her finger because her phone was getting so hot. And Kneecap were on after Bob Vylan. So we've had this broadcast live set, including this very strong language, and then we've had Kneecap's set, which is not being broadcast live except by Helen from Wales. During this set, they led a chant of Free, Free Palestine. They also led a chant of Fuck Keir Starmer. So again, that's that strong language we were talking about.
We did give a warning.
We gave a warning. The UK Prime Minister, he said they shouldn't be allowed to play the festival. And we know that they are very outspoken about Israel's actions in Gaza.
Give me a sense of why that is the case, that we have this group very rooted in Irish politics, culture and identity being so outspoken about the Israel situation in Gaza.
Yeah. So they have said they want innocent people to stop being killed. I also think a lot of people have become more outspoken in various directions following Hamas's attack on Israel on October 7, 2023, and then during Israel's ensuing war with Hamas in Gaza that has displaced most of the population and caused a humanitarian crisis. One of the most recent updates from the region was from before the festival. That was Israeli media reporting IDF soldiers had been ordered to shoot Palestinian civilians waiting to collect food at the US Israeli-run aid distribution sites. I'll be clear that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has denied this report. It's against that backdrop that we hear those comments from Bob Vylan saying death, death to the IDF, which was obviously kind of the biggest story out of the festival. And I'm talking about Kneecap right now, but just to recap, like why Bob Vylan was particularly making those comments perhaps, and also knowing that he was going to be live streamed and that Kneecap, as I said, weren't going to be live streamed might have contributed to the strength of those comments or the intensity of those comments. Then, just to return to Kneecap, I would also point to the fact that the UK government was part of the move to split Northern Ireland off from the rest of Ireland, becoming part of the UK. That was part of treaty negotiations ending a wave of violence. And Kneecap, who seek for Ireland to be united, might draw comparisons with the way the United Nations contributed to the creation of the State of Israel in the 1940s, partitioning it from the UK-controlled Palestinian territory. And it's that same word used in both processes, partition, separation. So I think that could be, this is just analysis, I think it could be terrorism-related.
And so you have two groups of performers hitting the stage at one of the biggest festivals in the world, using language that, particularly in that example of death to the IDF, is an incitement of violence.
Yeah.
What has the reaction been on the ground to those two sets?
Yeah, so on the ground at the festival, you can hear in the clips that I've played, the crowds join in the chants, they cheer for the acts. Outside the festival, things have been more mixed. The BBC has not uploaded Bob Vylan's set to iPlayer. In a statement, it called the comments, quote, deeply offensive. Kneecaps is available, though the BBC said it had been edited. From the festival organisers, we have this statement. We are appalled by the statements made by Bob Vylan yesterday. Their chants very much crossed a line, and we are urgently reminding everyone involved in the production of the festival that there is no place at Glastonbury for anti-Semitism, hate speech or incitement to violence. And local police are investigating to find out if any offences were carried out. The Israeli embassy in the UK put out a statement. They said, when such messages are delivered before tens of thousands of festival goers and met with applause, it raises serious concerns about the normalisation of extremist language and the glorification of violence.
I'm interested to see if there was any reaction from Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, and the government. Kneecap led a chant against him. Have we heard from the government?
So he called it appalling hate speech. I should say he was talking about Bob Vylan's comments, not Kneecap's.
Right.
But he did say that he had said that Kneecap shouldn't perform.
Right.
To me, the most interesting comments came from Wes Streeting. So he's in charge of health. He's effectively the health minister. And he not only responded to Bob Vylan's comments, he also responded to the Israeli embassy's comments. Here's what he said.
If I take the equivalent of the war in Ukraine, I'm unequivocal about which side of that war I'm on. I want Ukraine to win. Would I be celebrating or chanting for the death of Russian soldiers? No, I want to see an end to the war and I want to see an end to the conflict. I'd also say to the Israeli embassy, get your own house in order in terms of the conduct of your own citizens and the settlers in the West Bank. I think there's a serious point there by the Israeli embassy I take seriously. I wish they'd take the violence of their own citizens towards Palestinians more seriously.
So Streeting was referring there to Israeli settlers in the West Bank attacking Palestinians aided by IDF soldiers last week. That's according to Palestinian health authorities. Israeli settlements in the West Bank are considered illegal by the UN under international law.
I think what's interesting about this story is that the story is grounded in a music festival, a very popular music festival, but it's quickly become a story about international politics, international war, international law, and this link between the arts and politics. And they seem almost inseparable.
Yeah.
And that they, over history, seem to find ways to intersect with each other, even on some of the biggest stages in the world.
Yeah.
So just to reiterate, at the moment, there hasn't been official charges laid against the group.
Not at the time of recording, no.
Okay, thank you, Lucy, for taking us through that. A complicated incident, but one worth talking about. And that's all we've got from the Daily Aus newsroom. We're going to be back in the afternoon with your headlines. Until then, have a great day.